Assalamu alaikum. I am here. Okay. So today we are continuing our conversation about intermittent fasting. Hold on, my Insta people look kind of strange for a minute. Hold on. Let's put Insta people right there. There we go. Put my Insta people. Make sure my Insta people can see me. We are continuing our conversation around intermittent fasting today, and it is a Q&A, so I'm actually going to scroll some of the previous videos. So if you are just joining us, that this is actually part 3. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Rise Reina. I think I said that right. So, how are you guys doing today? She said, I love IF, even coffee and business, even if you do it by accident. That happens sometimes, right? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are talking today about intermittent fasting. And if you are just joining us, then you've missed part 1 and 2. That means that stay, let's talk, let's have a conversation. And then afterwards, you can scroll my profile, you can scroll the videos on my Facebook page or the IGTV on Instagram, and you can see part 1 and 2. We talked a little bit about the do's and don'ts of combining an Islamic fast and intermittent fast. That was yesterday, Tuesday. And then on Monday, we talked about sort of like the history of intermittent fasting and what are some of the benefits of it. So this is part 3. I want to go back and I want to look at some of the questions that was posted, because I didn't get a chance to get to the questions because I'm trying to curb my talkativeness. You know, I be talking, and then I end up on here for like 90 minutes, and I really don't plan on being on here for 90 minutes. I'm trying to do it I'm trying to do 30 minutes. That's what I'm trying. Yesterday we went 35, so I'm proud of myself. I know how to shut up. All right. Yes, we are saving all of these videos. I need to know about more foods with help with PCOS. Please advise. I just got diagnosed. Oh, okay. PCOS is definitely a conversation that we can have around. So I'm going to have to do a live specifically on PCOS. But let me just say this, because we talked about this. I talked about this in an interview a couple of weeks ago. It is not a disease. PCOS is a collection of symptoms, and when you remove one of the symptoms, then you actually will remove the diagnosis of PCOS. If you are interested, send me a DM and I will send you an excellent interview. So I did a radio show for 2 years. I was a radio show host, and I had the opportunity to actually twice interview an expert on PCOS. Her name is Dr. Lubna Pal, and she actually researches here at Yale. I live in Yale town, like a mile from Yale University. She gave lots of really good information. Like, she talked about using cinnamon to lower your insulin level. She talked about using vitamin D. So at the time that I was interviewing her, and I know this is like a side note, and I'm always doing this. We're supposed to be talking about intermittent fasting, but I get caught up in the question because the question is super important and it's very relevant to a lot of people. So she talked about doing vitamin D. And at the time that I interviewed her about 2 years ago, she was ending her research on vitamin D and PCOS. And what they found is that most women who had PCOS also had really low vitamin D. So her research was around what comes first, the horse or the cart. are women with low vitamin D more prone to PCOS, or does having PCOS make you more prone to having low vitamin D? So again, if you would like to listen to that interview, send me a DM either on Facebook or Instagram, and I will send it to you. I actually did 2 interviews with her. Each one was an hour long. She really informed. Her research was not just with women with PCOS, but she specifically treats women with fertility issues, which vitamin D is also apparently extremely important. Like, one of the things that she was saying to me in one of the interviews that I specifically remember is that when women come to her that have fertility issues, that the first thing that they do is they get their vitamin D levels up. She was like, their vitamin D levels are normally in the tank, and she likes to see their vitamin D level at a 40. Now, that's significant because healthy vitamin D is when you go to your doctor and you get a vitamin D test. If it is under 30, then they will tell you you have low vitamin D, you need to increase it. Now, I can tell you, like, from personal experience, and I'm going to say this to all the hijabis out there, if you are having a problem with energy level, if you are having a problem losing weight, and what people often want to associate is like, oh, it must be my hormone. Oh, I must have a thyroid problem. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is, as my doctor explained it to me, she's such a great doctor. She's been my doctor for 28 years. Is vitamin D is the old new vitamin, meaning that they've known about it for many decades, but recently vitamin D being connected with so many health issues, right? We know even now in times of COVID, vitamin D is actually something that has been shown to have a correlation with COVID and the severity of the symptoms. Like, people with low vitamin D level tend to have more severe symptoms of COVID. So vitamin D is absolutely essential. If you are hijabi, if you have a lot of melanin, like me, a lot of melanin in your skin, then there's a couple. See, I'm getting sidetracked. I was supposed to be talking about intermittent fasting, but I got to get this vitamin D information out there because it's so important. All right, so we are going to talk about intermittent fasting, but I gotta tell you guys this. All right, so I do not have ADHD. I just want to say that for the record. I just have a lot of stuff that I want to tell you, and so I have like giving you lots of information. I just want to tell you a lot of stuff. I do not have ADHD. So we are going to talk about intermittent fasting. Okay, 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes to talk about vitamin D. All right. So when your vitamin D level is low, so if you are hijabi, I would encourage you that instead of going to your doctor and saying, oh, I must have a thyroid problem, and your doctor is like, your thyroid is fine, have your vitamin D level tested. A lot of doctors don't. First thing that they don't like go to vitamin D first. I know for me, low vitamin D showed itself as being very fatigued and tired. Like, I was tired all of the time. So, when I owned a fitness studio, so I used to own a fitness studio, and I was like training 40 hours a week. I was running a business. And I was just tired, right? I would literally get up at 4:30 in the morning because I taught a 5:30 a.m. boot camp. I would come home at like 9 o'clock at night. In between that, I was shuffling kids here and there. And so sometimes, when I was coming home, I was just always exhausted. I was like absolutely exhausted. And my husband was so understanding. He was just like, oh, it's just because you're doing so much. Why don't you try to hire another trainer? I hired another trainer, and I was still exhausted. And so when it was time for me, when I went to the doctor for my annual, I would just explain to her, like, I know I do a lot, right? I own a business. I got 4 kids. Like, I understand that I do a lot, but I feel like I shouldn't be this tired all the time. So she said, she's like, you have a lot of risk factors. She's like, we live in the Northeast where, it's cold, like 5 months out of the year, we stay a lot of time indoors. She's like, you cover everything but your face and hands. So even when you're in the sun, you're not getting direct sun to your skin. She was like, and you have a lot of melanin, which is also going to affect how your skin absorbs the sun. She's like, I'm going to test you for vitamin D. Now, remember I told you that healthy vitamin D level is 30? My vitamin D level was 9, like just the number 9, not 90, it was 9. And I was tired. I was so exhausted. The great news is, like, within 2 weeks of starting to supplement for vitamin D, my energy level went up. I felt so much better. So I started supplementing with vitamin D. So here is the thing about supplementing with vitamin D that I actually did not know until later. It took me a long time to get my vitamin D level up. When I hit that 30 mark, I was like, I'm the bee's knees. I was so excited. I was like, yes, I got to 30, right? But it took me a super long time. It took me like a year. Then I did the interview with Dr. Powell, and she was like, it should not have taken you a year to get your vitamin D level to 30. Because I was actually doing it wrong. And this started my obsession with being very careful of how I take supplements, not just what I take. What I did not know is that vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, right? So the first tip that Dr. Powell gave me was always take your vitamin D supplement with your highest fat meal. It is a fat, so I was getting up in the morning so I don't forget, right? We do this all the time. Oh, we do this because it's just easy for us. But sometimes we have to do what works, not just what's easy, okay? So I was getting up in the morning, first thing in the morning, I was taking my vitamin D capsules, right? The tablets. Was it tablets? It was tablets. Vitamin D tablets in the morning on an empty stomach so that I can make sure that I take it, right? Nope, not a good idea. You need to take vitamin D with fat. So eat it with your meal. The second tip that she gave me was make sure that when you go to the store to buy your vitamin D, get the liquid, because it is more bioavailable and you are going to get more vitamin D. So no tablets, no capsules, get the liquid. So those are 2 really great tips that I got. No, I am not anemic. And no, at the time I was not anemic. It was simply a low vitamin D. So this is why my doctor calls vitamin D the old new vitamin, is that oftentimes doctors forget about it and they don't offer the test, or they don't recommend the test because they're focusing on, oh, let's see what your thyroid is like. Oh, we know that anemia causes fatigue, but low vitamin D level causes fatigue as well. So make sure if you are, and also too, I say, important. This is for Black people, all right? And talk to my Black people for a minute. Now, people of African descent. We are talking about the diaspora. So if you're Arab, you're part of this. If you're African, you're a part of this. Obviously, if you're African American like me, you're a part of this. Let me talk to my African people, right? Vitamin D level, even though we can go by the test that they take for vitamin D level to give us an indication, it is less accurate for people of African descent because we store vitamin D in a different way, right? I'm not going to go find it. I'm going to let you go find it. There was a NPR podcast. Look in Google and look up NPR vitamin D, Black people or African American. And you can actually read the transcript and you can listen to it. And it talked about our vitamin D for people of African descent is actually stored deeper into our cells, and they haven't figured out a test to actually measure it, right? A practical test that people can apply to actually measure it correctly. So people of African descent can have higher vitamin D levels than what the test is actually indicating. But with that said, it is still a test that we need, and it will give us an indication, right? So your test is not going to say your vitamin D level is 9, but it's really a 50, right? That was very anecdotally incorrect for me, right? So when I started supplementing with vitamin D level, my vitamin D level started to rise, then I certainly felt the difference physically, right? My energy level was restored. When I went to bed at night, instead of me pretty much passing out, I actually was able to lay down and go to sleep. That's the difference. That's how you know the difference between you've done a lot and you're exhausted, right? Can be tired, but exhaustion is something completely different. That was a lot about vitamin D. Let's go back to intermittent fasting. You guys got me off track. How did I get on vitamin D anyway? Oh, I know. Coffee and Business asked me about PCOS, and then I started talking about something else. See, like one thing turns to other, right? So Hadra said, how a vitamin D test misdiagnosed African Americans is the title for the article in the podcast. Yes. So Google that. And it was done on NPR. All right. How vitamin D test misdiagnosed African Americans. But I still will encourage people of African descent to get their vitamin D level test, because it is going to give you at least a roundabout of whether or not your vitamin D level is low. We know now that it is not completely accurate, because people of African descent hold their vitamin D in a different manner than people who are not of African descent. And so you want to make sure. Thank you, Hadra. It's dated 11/2013. So you're talking about, what's that, 8 years ago? So this is not new information. Also, share that with your doctor, because I'm going to be honest, I did share that with my doctor as well. But I still take vitamin D. All right. It's just really, it's one of the vitamins that really should be a part of your conscious consumption for your health. All right. Intermittent fasting. Can we go back to the topic that I claimed that this live was supposed to be about anyway? It's just intermittent fasting. All right. All right. So yesterday we talked about fasting and bringing and combining Islamic fast and intermittent fasting. Today we are specifically talking about intermittent fasting, not the Islamic version, not dry fasting. We're talking about intermittent fasting is considered wet fasting, because you are allowed to drink water, you're allowed to drink black coffee, and you are allowed to drink green tea. Now, one of the questions that I get a lot is that, can I have my berry tea? Can I have my ginger tea? Can I have this tea? Can I have that tea? The thing about having other types of herbal teas and herbs while you're fasting is that some of them can actually raise your insulin level. So the physiological reason for fasting that is going to give you the benefit is the lowering of your insulin level, right? Because that's your domino hormone. And when your insulin level lowers, then it is going to create a domino effect for other hormones, right? So it's really important that you really understand that that is the purpose of the fast. The purpose of the fast is not to reduce your calories. Obviously, that's going to happen during your fasting hours. The purpose of the fast is not to starve yourself. It is not starving. So that's a good question, right? What is the difference between fasting and starving? One, the first difference is the intentions, right? The second difference is When you are starving yourself, or when your body is using the word starving, it means that you are in a state of nutrient deprivation, right? So can doing extensive intermittent fasting lead to starvation? Absolutely. If you are doing intermittent fasting and then when you are breaking your fast, you're not eating enough food or you're eating the wrong foods, yes, that can lead to starving yourself. But the goal with intermittent fasting is not to starve yourself. The second difference between fasting and starving is the circumstances around it, which is going to significantly affect how your body responds, right? When someone is literally starving, there is a level of stress in their environment. And so their insulin level is actually not going to be as low as somebody who is intentionally doing an intermittent fast, because their cortisol level is going to be high because of the stress level, right? So we can't say like, oh, children in Yemen are just doing intermittent fasting. People in Somalia is just doing intermittent fasting, right? It doesn't work like that, right? It's not just about how much you're eating. It is your body is a whole, right? We cannot separate the digestive system literally from the weather. It is all a part of how your body is going to respond, right? We are a part of our environment. We respond to it even when we think we don't, right? Subconsciously. I'm not looking outside at the weather, but the weather is affecting the way that I feel, my mood, all of these things, right? So it's really important that we look at our body as a whole and as a part of our greater environment. And so that is really important. So don't think that just because you are into intermittent fasting that you're going to be starving yourself. You're not starving yourself. One of the other questions that I got the other day, hold up. I got a question. What about constipation in intermittent fasting? So intermittent fasting should not cause constipation because one, you need to make sure that you are drinking enough water. What is enough water? Enough water is half your body weight in ounces. So half your body weight in pounds for people who are not in the United States. I think we're like the only people in the world that actually use pounds and not kilograms. But half your body weight in pounds and ounces of water every single day. That is what you should be drinking at minimum. If you live in a hot environment where you're sweating all the time, you need to increase your water from that point. If you do intense exercise where you're doing a lot of sweating, or you're just one of those people that sweat a lot, then you need to be drinking water, more water than that. So what do I mean half your body weight in ounces? That means everybody does not need to drink a gallon of water a day. I know that's like some big old trend. So let's dispel that myth, all right? The amount of water that you drink should be based on your physical body, not on a Facebook trend or Instagram trend. By the way, let me tell you where that trend comes from. Drinking a gallon of water a day actually comes from the bodybuilding community. And the reason why it comes from the bodybuilding community is because bodybuilders eat a lot of protein, right? Most bodybuilders, if they are like bulking up for a show or something like that, what they're doing is that they're eating 1-to-1 ratio. So if they weigh 200 pounds, they're trying to eat 200 grams of protein a day. And sometimes they will do 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, right? So that's for bodybuilding community. But what happens when you eat a lot of protein, a lot doesn't mean like increase. It mean like if you go over a 1-to-1 ratio, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, your body actually has to break down the proteins and the nitrates, and it uses additional water, and you can become dehydrated. And so people who eat that level of protein must increase their water because of the physiological metabolic process that's happening in their body in order to break down and convert that amount of protein requires additional water. So that is actually where that trend comes from. So if you aren't eating a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to body weight, then you probably do not need a gallon of water a day. Who needs a gallon of water a day? Going back to our previous half your body weight in pounds and ounces of water a day. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you should be drinking 100 ounces of water every single day, right? If you weigh 260 pounds, then you should be drinking a gallon of water a day. A gallon is 128 ounces, right? If you double that, that would be your poundage, all right? So again, I'm talking about minimum. If you are in a hot environment, if you're sweating a lot, then you're exercising a lot, you actually need to have that as your minimum, half your body weight in pounds, and then you need to add water to it, okay? So that is one way to avoid constipation when you're doing intermittent fasting. The second way to avoid constipation when you're doing intermittent fasting is that during your eating hours, make sure that you are eating vegetables that are going to give you fiber, right? That's number 2. Third thing, if you're like, I'm doing all of that and I'm still having a problem, then it is probably your electrolyte balance. Sodium is super duper important, especially if you're doing intermittent fasting and a ketogenic diet. Sodium is the most important nutrient that you can make sure that you have, right? Oftentimes when people don't have enough sodium, it actually causes constipation. So then I would recommend that you do an electrolyte drink or take some electrolyte supplements, all right? So that is the question about that. Can you have cinnamon, fennel, and cardamom before bed? I guess if you like, all right? Can one do an 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. Fajr, fast to Fajr? Yes, you can, but that is the minimum. Remember yesterday we talked about 12 hours is the very minimum. Do you really want to do the minimum, right? Minimum. So definitely try to do a little bit more than that. See if you can get yourself to the 16 hours. So 16-8 is a very common way of fasting because it's generally the easiest way for people to incorporate fasting into their life, because it just means I'm going to stop eating at 8 p.m. I'm going to skip breakfast and I'll eat at 12 noon. All right? That's pretty simple. All right? What else with this? Oh, yeah. I liked yesterday's live. I thought it was really great with our Islamic Jeopardy Science of the Sunnah questions. All right. Any questions about intermittent fasting? All right. Someone said intermittent fasting for 16 hours is best for weight loss, 14 hours intermittent fasting for maintaining fast. That is made up. I'll be honest. That's completely made up. Somebody tells you that, say, oh, can you refer me to the research study around that? Because it doesn't exist. I'll be honest. So I don't know this person or who said that, but I'm just telling you because, again, my goal is to inform you about the research, the science, so that you can understand how food and movement affects your body on a physiological level and you can make informed decisions about your health, right? So that is super important. The reason why people recommend a 16-hour fast is because it's just simply easier. It's the easiest version. It's sort of kind of like, what people don't know is that in the United States anyway, so I live in the United States, when people, when the CDC recommends 30 minutes of exercise a day, we know inside of the health and fitness community that that is like the minimum, just so that you don't get more unhealthy than you're supposed to, right? If your goal is to lose weight, if your goal is to manage a disease, you need to do more than that. Like, that is not 30 minutes of walking a day is like, hey, let me stop the progression of this disease. It is not a way for you to reverse things, right? So when we talk about fasting, 12 hours is like the minimum. 16 hours is where it's practical. So the reason why the CDC and the American College of Sports Medicine can recommend that 30 minutes is not because that is the most beneficial thing for people. It's because it's been just determined that it's the most practical thing that people can implement, right? When we look at the research around intermittent fasting and weight loss, 18 to 20 hours is the sweet spot. So if somebody is telling you in order to lose weight, you need to fast for 12 hours, you need to fast for 14 hours, that is not what the research tells us. The research tells us, so again, I'm going to send you to Google. I'm not going to put it here. Go to Google and look up sweet spot of fat loss for intermittent fasting. It's going to bring up all of these articles, connect you to the research about it. There's actually a graph. You can actually look at the graph that will show lipolysis throughout a 3-day fast, right? And what it shows is that the lipolysis is the technical term for your body breaking down fat cells. So as you fast from that 12-hour point up, your fat burn goes like this. And then when it hits the hour of 18, it goes like this. And then it starts evening out again. So again, the other thing too is on the other end of the extreme, I don't know why somebody added me to this group, but I'm in this group. And I just be looking at them and I don't want to say nothing because it's not my group, but people be in there be like, oh, I'm trying to lose 100 pounds, so I'm going to do a 30-day water fast. I'm like, bruh, eat something. Like, for real. So here's the problem with that. And we were supposed to talk about this tomorrow. There is a limit to the benefits in terms of weight loss for fasting, right? There is no research around the benefits of a 30-day fast because it's just a protocol that is really hard to research to get enough people to do that. So that's number one. So when someone says like, oh yeah, I've done a 30-day fast, take it with a grain of salt because the benefits that they have gotten, you can only tell on an external basis, right? You can't tell that their metabolism is actually slower now than it was before they started fasting, right? You can't tell any physiological internal damage that it has done to their system in terms of shrinking of organs or things like that. Only thing that you're seeing is, oh, look, this person is smaller, right? Being smaller does not make you healthier, right? Your weight is only one aspect of health. It is only one indicator of health. It is not the end all be all. I know lots of skinny people who are very unhealthy. I know lots of skinny people who got diabetes, who got high blood pressure, right? So that's only one indicator of health. I'm always talking about weight, and how we need to lose weight because it is a indicator of health, but it's not the only indicator of health. Super important for us to understand that. So I personally do not recommend like 30-day fast and fast for, 2 months. Don't do that. Because here's the thing. That is the reason why they created the ketogenic diet. A lot of people don't know this, but now you're going to know, right? The ketogenic diet was literally created to simulate the benefits of fasting without fasting. Now you got some information that a lot of people don't have. Remember that. All right. And so it literally was. All right. So just my mother said if intermittent fasting is good to do for 12-hour Muslim fast starting from Shadr to Maghrib. Yes, Islamic fasting is a form of intermittent fasting. It's called dry fasting. And I definitely do recommend that Muslim. That's what my live yesterday was all about. Like all of the things that science is showing as a benefit of fasting is literally already recommended in the Sunnah. All right. Yes. So next week, we are going to talk all week about ketogenic diet, from the history of the diet, what medical benefits that it has, what weight loss benefits that it has, how do you start to apply it. So every week, I'm going to have a theme around what we're doing. This week was intermittent fasting. We were supposed to talk about intermittent fasting today, but we got sidetracked. And next week, all week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to talk about ketogenic diet. But yes, the ketogenic diet was actually created to simulate a water fast, because it does literally the same thing. So people are literally like starving themselves for no reason. Like, you don't got to starve yourself. Eat a piece of steak. Okay. Okay, people, that is my time for today. I have to not go for 90 minutes because then IGTV is not going to let me save it. So catch me tomorrow. Tomorrow, we are specifically going to talk about extended fast. So one of the things, the terminology that we have to really have clarification on is the fact that intermittent fasting is when you fast for 24 hours or less. An extended fast is when you fast for more than 24 hours. Doing a 2-day fast, a 48-hour fast, doing a 3-day fast, doing a 30-day fast. And there are some benefits in doing that extended fast. And so what I want to do tomorrow is I'm going to talk about extended fast, when it's appropriate, how you do it, and some of the do's and don'ts around that, right? Because if you're going to go without food for 3 days, there is, if you're going to, thank you for that. If you're going to go without food for 3 days, you want to make sure that you are having the right nutrients. You want to make sure that you are breaking your fast in the appropriate manner, because that is really important when you go an extended time. All right? 11:30 a.m. Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Mark your calendar. Click on the little bell on Facebook. I think when you logged onto my live, Facebook should have brought you a notification. Subscribe to these lives so you get notifications. Get the notifications because we have lots of good stuff to talk about. And if you haven't joined me before, I forgot. My name is Mubaraka Ibrahim, and I am your health and happiness coach. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum.